You know, sometimes people will test your peace like it's their full-time job. They'll say the wrong thing, look at you sideways, roll their eyes, and before you even know it, you're ready to match their energy. But baby, I came to tell you tonight, you don't have to lose your peace just because somebody else lost theirs. See, the enemy doesn't always come with horns and a pitchfork. Sometimes he comes dressed as that coworker, that family member, that comment that makes you want to clap back. But when you know who you are, when you've been anchored in purpose and covered in grace, you start to realize, I don't have to attend every argument I'm invited to. You've got too much destiny ahead of you to let somebody's attitude pull you out of character. So tonight we're going to talk about how to stand so rooted in your peace that not even chaos can shake you. Because when God has done too much for you, when you've healed from too much, when you've prayed through too much, you stop letting people have access to your emotions like they've got a key to your soul. When you start to understand the power of peace, you realize it's not something you can afford to lose every time somebody comes for you. Peace is not weakness. Peace is wisdom dressed in calm. Protecting your peace before you defend your point means you choose to keep your spirit intact, even when your ego is screaming for attention. You see, most people don't realize that every argument, every confrontation, every little offense, it's not really about the situation. It's about the invitation. People invite you into their chaos, and every time you say yes, you surrender your peace. But when you start living with spiritual discernment, you realize you can decline that invitation with grace. You can walk away without proving you're right, because your peace is worth more than being right. There will always be moments when your flesh wants to rise up and clap back, but peace whispers, let it go. And that whisper is not a sign of surrender, it's a sign of strength. Because it takes far more power to hold your peace than to raise your voice. You can't live at your highest level while constantly fighting at ground level. Protecting your peace is not about avoiding people. It's about training your spirit to stay unbothered no matter who walks into the room. The truth is, your peace is your power source. Every time you let someone disrupt it, you're giving them access to drain your energy, your focus, your joy. You can't walk in your calling while allowing people to dictate your mood. Sometimes the reason we keep getting angry is because we keep trying to prove something to people who were never assigned to understand us. They can't see your vision, they can't feel your heart, they can't comprehend your growth, and yet you let them pull you into battles that have nothing to do with your purpose. Protecting your peace means saying, I don't owe anyone an explanation for my evolution. Because when God starts elevating you, not everybody will clap for you. Some will question you, some will doubt you, some will provoke you, but you have to stay grounded enough to say, you can't have my peace. There's a point in spiritual maturity where you realize you don't have to defend your name when God already knows your heart. You don't have to respond to every rumor, every misunderstanding, every person trying to stir something up, because when you spend all your energy defending yourself, you take your eyes off your assignment. Peace allows you to stay focused on what truly matters. The enemy doesn't always attack your health or your finances. Sometimes he attacks your peace because he knows if he can disturb your mind, he can disrupt your mission. Protecting your peace means building spiritual boundaries. That means learning to say no, learning to step back, learning to pray before you speak, and learning to let silence do the heavy lifting. You have to start treating your peace like your most valuable possession, because it is. You wouldn't hand your car keys to someone reckless, so why hand your emotions to someone careless? Protecting your peace is not being cold. It's being wise. It's knowing that not everyone deserves access to your spirit. Some people only come to drain, distract, and delay what God is doing in you. But when you protect your peace, you start moving different. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop proving and start progressing. You stop explaining and start exemplifying. You start understanding that the most powerful person in the room is the one who refuses to be moved by chaos. The world will always test you. You'll face disrespect, misunderstanding, and unfair treatment. But protecting your peace means understanding that your peace was never dependent on how others treat you. It was built on the foundation of how God holds you. He gives you peace that surpasses understanding, meaning people won't understand how you stay calm, how you keep your joy, how you smile through what should have broken you. But that's what divine peace does. It guards your heart and your mind so deeply that nothing external can shake what's internal. Protecting your peace before defending your point means sometimes you have to let people think they're right while you stay righteous. It means choosing to walk away from debates that lead nowhere, arguments that drain you, or situations that don't align with your purpose. Because you start to realize that peace is not passive, it's a decision. It's a daily choice to say, I won't let this moment define me. When you protect your peace, you start seeing things for what they are, not how they make you feel. You see hurt people trying to project their pain. You see confused people trying to transfer their chaos, and instead of reacting, you respond with understanding because you know their behavior isn't about you, it's about their own unhealed wounds. The secret to staying unbothered is not pretending you don't care. It's mastering how to care without carrying. You can care about people and still not let their behavior disturb your spirit. You can love deeply and still walk away peacefully. Protecting your peace is not about isolation, it's about alignment. When your heart is aligned with your purpose, you stop allowing nonsense to take up sacred space in your spirit. You learn to filter what deserves your attention. You learn to protect your focus. You learn that sometimes silence is the loudest response you can give. There will be days when you'll feel provoked to prove your worth, to defend your integrity, to make sure people know your side of the story. But peace says, be still. Because what God is doing in your life will speak louder than any defense you could give. Peace keeps you from letting temporary noise interrupt eternal purpose. Protecting your peace means you're no longer fighting to be understood, you're living to be grounded. And here's the thing, peace doesn't just protect you from others, it also protects you from yourself. Because sometimes the battle isn't external, it's internal. You can be angry at people on the outside, but really, it's the storm inside of you that needs calming. When you protect your peace, you start tending to your inner world. You check your triggers, you heal your wounds, you forgive faster, and you stop expecting others to give you what only God can provide. Peace is not the absence of problems, it's the presence of stability in the middle of them. It's standing in a storm and saying, I may not control what they say, but I control how I respond. Protecting your peace before defending your point means your energy is too valuable to waste on proving yourself. It means you start speaking less from emotion and more from intention. You realize that not every reaction deserves your revelation. You stop needing to win arguments and start winning peace. Because the moment you stop defending your point, you start defending your destiny. And when peace becomes your priority, purpose becomes your focus. Respond from purpose, not from pain. That's where transformation truly begins. Because pain will always have something to say. It will speak first, it will shout loud, it will demand to be heard, but purpose whispers. Purpose waits for you to be still long enough to listen. When you respond from pain, you react from the wound. But when you respond from purpose, you act from wisdom. One makes you a prisoner of emotion, the other makes you a steward of intent. Pain wants to pull you into cycles of defending, of proving, of arguing, of explaining. Purpose wants to pull you into clarity about who you are, what you carry, and what's worth your response. Most people live their lives reacting to the past. They're not living from purpose. They're living from pain. They're still responding to something their parents said, something their ex did, something a friend betrayed. But if you don't heal what hurt you, you'll start seeing every situation through the lens of your pain. You'll interpret correction as criticism, distance as rejection, and advice as attack. Pain will always twist perception. That's why when you're led by pain, you end up responding in ways that create more chaos. You start matching energy, clapping back, speaking out of anger, and then regretting it later. But when you move from purpose, you learn that every response doesn't need to be immediate, and every battle doesn't need to be fought. Responding from purpose means you pause before you speak. You breathe before you react. You consult your spirit before you confront a situation. Because when you've been through enough, you start realizing peace isn't passive. It's powerful. You can't let your emotions sit in the driver's seat and expect to arrive at destiny. You have to let purpose drive and let emotion ride in the back seat. Pain wants control, but purpose wants direction. Pain says show them, purpose says grow through it. Pain says get even, purpose says get elevated. Pain keeps score, but purpose keeps focus. Sometimes responding from purpose means you have to let people misunderstand you. It means walking away when your pride wants to stay and prove a point. It means being silent when your ego wants to scream. It means being kind to someone who doesn't deserve it, not because they earned it, but because you refuse to become them. When you respond from pain, you mirror the problem. But when you respond from purpose, you model the solution. You shift the atmosphere because you refuse to let the atmosphere shift you. There's a discipline in choosing purpose over pain, because pain feels good in the moment. It feels like release. It feels like validation. It feels like power, but it's temporary. It's like scratching a wound that only makes it bleed more. Purpose requires patience. It requires maturity. It requires trust in something bigger than the moment. Purpose makes you ask, what am I really trying to build here? What story am I telling with my reaction? Am I protecting my peace, or am I feeding my pain? Because every response is a seed, and you will always harvest what you plant. When you start living from purpose, you stop letting pain write your script. You stop letting the past define how you show up in the present. You stop using hurt as a language. You start using wisdom. You start seeing pain for what it is, a teacher, not a ruler. Pain can educate you, but it should never lead you. It teaches you where you still need healing, where you still need boundaries, where you still need grace. Responding from purpose means you let healing interpret your story, not hurt. Think about it. Jesus was betrayed, denied, mocked, beaten, and still he responded from purpose. He could have called down angels. He could have proven his power, but he chose restraint because purpose doesn't need validation. It already knows its value. When you move from purpose, you're no longer reactive, you're reflective. You take a step back and ask, does this align with who I'm becoming? You realize that your purpose is too heavy to carry alongside grudges. You can't hold on to offense and destiny at the same time. One has to go. Responding from pain will always make you feel justified but empty. Responding from purpose will make you feel stretched but fulfilled. Purpose doesn't always feel good in the moment, but it always produces growth. You start realizing that the people who hurt you were often part of the process that shaped you. That betrayal pushed you to boundaries. That rejection taught you resilience. That pain gave you perspective. And when you respond from purpose, you stop needing revenge because you start seeing revelation. You see how everything that was meant to break you built you instead. Responding from purpose also means you stop personalizing everything. Not every comment deserves your energy. Not every misunderstanding requires your defense. You learn to say, this isn't about me. Because pain will always take things personally. It's self-centered. Purpose is kingdom-centered. It understands that sometimes God allows certain moments to reveal what's in you, not just what's around you. He allows tension to test your transformation, because how can you say you've grown if you still respond the same way you used to? How can you say you've healed if you still let the same triggers control you? You start realizing that your response is your testimony. People may never read a Bible, but they'll read your behavior. And if you respond from purpose, you start showing what grace looks like in motion. You start showing what strength looks like in stillness. You start showing what faith looks like under pressure. When you respond from purpose, your calm becomes contagious. Your peace becomes your weapon. Your silence becomes your sermon. There will be moments when you feel the heat rising in your chest, when your hands shake, when your thoughts race, and your old self whispers, don't let them disrespect you. That's when purpose has to rise louder. That's when you remind yourself, I'm not who I used to be. Because reacting out of pain will cost you your progress. You've come too far to let an old version of yourself make decisions for the new season you're stepping into. Purpose teaches you how to stay grounded in grace even when your flesh is on fire. Responding from purpose doesn't mean you suppress your feelings. It means you surrender them. You bring them to God before you bring them to people. You process before you respond. You heal before you speak. Because sometimes you don't need to defend yourself. You just need to be still and let time reveal what truth already knows. When you let pain lead, you seek revenge. When you let purpose lead, you seek resolution. You choose peace over pride, healing over hostility, destiny over drama. Pain reacts, purpose reflects. Pain speaks fast, purpose speaks wise. Pain wants to be heard, purpose wants to be effective. And the difference between a reaction and a response is time. Time to breathe, time to pray, time to remember who you are. That pause is holy. That pause is power, because in that pause you reclaim control. You say, I will not be moved by emotion, I will be led by intention. You refuse to let someone's temporary behavior make you forget your eternal identity. Responding from purpose also means being intentional about what you allow to feed your spirit. Because if you're constantly feeding on negativity, offense, gossip, and drama, pain will always have the louder voice. But when you feed yourself truth, prayer, worship, and reflection, purpose gets stronger. It becomes your default setting. You no longer wake up waiting for peace. You wake up walking in it. You stop seeking validation because you already know who you are. You stop fighting for approval because you already know you're chosen. When you respond from purpose, you no longer need to win arguments, you start winning peace. You no longer need to clap back, you start clapping for your growth. You no longer need to explain, you start exemplifying. People will notice the shift. They'll wonder why you're not reacting the way you used to. They'll think you've changed, and they'll be right. Because purpose changes everything. It changes your posture, your tone, your thoughts, your energy. It teaches you that control isn't about manipulating the situation. It's about mastering yourself. You begin to realize that your peace is not fragile. It's fortified. It's built on something deeper than emotion. It's built on divine alignment. And when you respond from purpose, you start to live with authority instead of anxiety. You stop letting your circumstances dictate your character. You stop giving temporary people permanent access to your emotions. You learn that the most powerful statement you can make is peace itself. Because purpose doesn't shout, it shines. It doesn't fight for attention, it commands it through consistency. Responding from purpose will cost you pride, but it will pay you peace. It will stretch you, but it will strengthen you. It will humble you, but it will also honor you. Because when you choose to rise above offense, when you choose to operate from grace, when you choose to reflect instead of react, you start walking in real power. You become the evidence that transformation is possible. You become proof that peace is not the absence of struggle, but the presence of strength. Maturity is mastering your silence. Not the silence that comes from fear or suppression, but the kind that comes from wisdom. The kind of silence that knows when to speak and when to simply stand still. Because silence is not weakness, it's strategy. It's the moment when you let peace do the talking. There is power in knowing that you don't have to respond to everything that comes your way. You don't have to prove yourself in every argument. You don't have to explain every decision, and you don't have to correct every misunderstanding. Maturity is when you can look at a situation, feel the urge to defend yourself, and still say, it's not worth my peace. That's not passivity, that's power under control. People will mistake your silence for surrender, but it's actually strength. Because it takes more strength to be quiet when your emotions are screaming than to speak when your spirit is unsettled. Maturity teaches you that silence is not the absence of response, it's the presence of restraint. It's choosing not to waste your words on ears that aren't willing to listen. It's realizing that not everyone deserves access to your thoughts, your plans, or your truth. You learn that silence is sacred because it protects what's still growing inside of you. Every time you speak prematurely, you risk exposing what God is still developing privately. Sometimes your silence is not just protection, it's preservation. Maturity is realizing that every opinion doesn't need your reaction. You stop needing to clarify, justify, or magnify. You let people think what they want because you finally understand that their perception is not your responsibility. Silence becomes your sanctuary. When you stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, you reclaim your peace. You learn to let time reveal what truth already knows, because maturity teaches you that vindication comes from patience, not proof. The truth always surfaces and you don't have to chase it. Silence doesn't mean you're ignoring what happened, it means you're refusing to let it control your response. There's a difference between silence that avoids conflict and silence that transcends it. Avoidance is rooted in fear. Transcendence is rooted in wisdom. When you've healed enough, you realize you can acknowledge pain without reacting from it. You can see betrayal and still bless. You can experience offense and still keep your composure. That's when silence becomes maturity. You start seeing that peace is louder than any defense. When you master your silence, you stop reacting to bait. The enemy doesn't just use temptation, he uses provocation. He'll send words, situations, and people designed to pull you out of character. But when you learn to be still, you rob him of his power. You disarm chaos with calm, because silence is not the absence of power, it's the evidence of control. When you master your silence, you become untouchable. Not because you don't feel, but because you've learned how to filter what deserves a response. There's a difference between being quiet and being still. Quiet can be empty, but stillness is full. It's full of discernment, full of prayer, full of understanding. It's when you let God translate what your words can express. Silence becomes your spiritual language. When you don't know what to say, your silence speaks faith. It says, I trust God to handle what my words cannot. Because sometimes speaking too soon can sabotage what patience could have solved. Maturity teaches you that some things are better left unsaid until peace writes the response. Mastering your silence also means mastering your thoughts, because silence isn't just what you don't say, it's what you don't entertain. You stop replaying offenses in your mind. You stop rehearsing old pain. You stop giving energy to imaginary arguments. Maturity teaches you to silence the noise inside before you silence the noise outside. Because peace doesn't come from shutting others out. It comes from shutting chaos down within yourself. When your internal world is calm, your external world can't shake you. There's a reason the Bible says even a fool is considered wise when they keep silent, because silence gives space for wisdom to speak through your actions instead of your words. You start realizing that explanation is often unnecessary when your consistency is visible. You don't have to announce growth, your peace shows it. You don't have to advertise maturity, your restraint reveals it. People start noticing the change in how you move, how you respond, how you no longer let small things disturb your spirit. Silence also builds discernment. When you stop talking so much, you start listening more deeply to others, to God, to yourself. You start catching things that words often cover. You hear the emotion behind someone's anger. You sense the insecurity behind someone's arrogance. You notice the pain behind someone's pride. That's what silence does. It sharpens your awareness. It gives you spiritual clarity. It teaches you to see beyond the surface. Maturity means you don't just react to what people do, you understand why they do it. And once you understand that, it's easier to stay calm. Mastering your silence also means mastering timing. Just because you're right doesn't mean it's the right time to speak. Just because you have the answer doesn't mean it's your moment to deliver it. Silence gives you the discipline to wait for divine timing. Because sometimes the impact of your words depends on when they're spoken. A word said in frustration can destroy what a word said in patience could heal. Silence gives your spirit time to align with wisdom before your mouth opens in emotion. Maturity also teaches you that silence doesn't make you small. The world will try to convince you that if you don't speak up, you're losing, but silence is not losing, it's choosing. You're choosing what battles are worthy of your energy. You're choosing peace over performance. You're choosing grace over gossip. You're choosing stillness over struggle. And in that choice, you're growing. Because not everything deserves your engagement. Some things only exist to test your growth. And every time you stay silent when you could have snapped, you pass a spiritual exam. There's also a healing kind of silence. The silence that comes after you've cried, prayed, and released. That's the silence where you start hearing yourself again. The silence where clarity returns. The silence where you remember you're still standing. It's not an empty quiet, it's a sacred reset. It's where strength starts to rebuild from the inside out. That kind of silence restores what noise tried to break. Maturity teaches you how to rest there, how to breathe there, how to draw peace from that space. When you master your silence, you stop needing closure from others. You stop needing apologies to move forward. You stop waiting for explanations that may never come. You learn how to close your own doors, bless your own healing, and walk away quietly, because sometimes silence is the only closure you'll get. And that's okay. You don't need validation from the same voices that tried to provoke you. You don't need answers when peace already explained it. Silence is also a mirror. It reveals where you are internally. If your silence feels like punishment, you're still operating from pain. But if your silence feels like protection, you're operating from peace. Maturity helps you know the difference. You start asking yourself, am I being silent because I'm scared or because I'm stable? That's how you track your growth. True maturity doesn't avoid confrontation, it simply refuses chaos. It knows that sometimes saying nothing says everything. There's also a spiritual authority that comes with silence, because silence keeps you unpredictable. When people can't read your reaction, they can't control your response. The enemy loses power when you stop giving him feedback. You start walking with quiet confidence. You stop announcing what you're doing next. You let your results speak louder than your declarations. Silence becomes your strategy, your way of staying hidden until it's time to be revealed. Not everything needs to be broadcasted. Some blessings grow best in silence. And maturity is also knowing when silence must end. Because silence isn't meant to last forever, it's meant to prepare you for the right words at the right time. But when you've mastered it, you no longer speak impulsively. You speak intentionally. Your words carry weight because they've been filtered through peace. When you speak, you shift atmospheres, not because you're loud, but because your silence gave your spirit authority. Silence season your voice with wisdom. Mastering your silence means you've learned to trust the process. You no longer rush to fix, to defend, to clarify. You let life unfold. You let God handle the parts you can't control. You don't panic when you're misunderstood because your peace isn't built on their perception. You don't crumble when things get quiet because you've learned that silence is not absence, it's alignment. It's where God does his best work, behind the scenes, in the stillness, in the unseen spaces of your soul.